Nitrocellulose versus polyurethane finishes. I've always heard that it's best if you have a guitar that is finished in nitro. It is alleged that it is more breathable, more resonant, and gives you the natural properties of the wood comparatively to polyurethane, which covers the wood and coats it in a thick plastic coating, thereby removing some of the acoustic properties of even something like a solid body instrument like a Fender Stratocaster. Now, I've seen other amazing YouTubers go down the rabbit hole testing and theorizing what may happen when you're finishing guitars in various types of finishes and whether there is any impact or influence on the tone by way of either finishing it in a lacquer like Nitro or using a poly-based finish. But I want to do the test for myself and really see if there is a difference. So our subject today is going to be a 1990s Eric Clapton Stratocaster. Now you may notice on the guitar that I have accidentally taken a section out of the lower bout. And what really caused me to want to investigate this question is I noticed that the thickness of the paint here was almost the thickness of a credit card. And I thought, man, that couldn't possibly be good for the tone of this guitar to be covered in a finish that's that thick and based in sort of a plastic material. So I decided that this guitar is going to be the candidate with which we're going to experiment with this particular idea. Does it make a difference in the tone of the guitar if it's finished in nitro versus poly? So in order to test this and create this bass line, I'm going to bring in my friends Milo and Kendrick. We're each going to play a little something on the guitar, some stuff clean, some stuff a little bit dirtier, and some stuff really overdriven. So we get to hear in a variety of contexts. We're going to play to a click track so that we're able to really lock in everything that is possible to recreate about the song, same timing and all that stuff. So then that way, after the guitar is refinished, we'll be able to replay those same parts as closely as possible and replicate the signal path as closely as possible. So I'm going to use the same exact strings, restringing it brand new, as I had just done. Pickup height's the same, everything about the setup and the bridge will be matched as closely as possible. And of course, we're documenting all the pedal settings when there's pedals used and all the amplifier settings again, so we can create everything as one-to-one as possible. I'm going to take the guitar to my friend Tony, who's going to be refinishing the guitar for us in nitro, stripping off the old polyurethane, refinishing it in the same black color in nitro. And then we're going to get a chance to compare how it sounds newly refinished in nitro compared to the bass line that we're creating today of the polyurethane finished body and see if it makes a difference. Let's see what happens. All right. Dr. Schroom.
Hey, how's it going, Mason?
Good. So let me show you Old Glory here.
Right.
Weighs 7 pounds, 11 ounces.
Which is not bad.
The video is all about, like, is there a difference between like a nitro finish or a polyurethane finish like what's on here now versus a full nitro finish?
Yeah.
Because people swear that this is like, you know, that the nitro has significantly more acoustical properties than the poly.
I think that's probably the thing. It resonates a little bit more.
Yeah.
That's from my experience, man. These poly sounds a little bit more dead.
Yeah.
Doesn't ring as much. I mean,
Right.
you know, there's always exceptions and everything, but
Sure.
usually thick poly, it does kind of dampen the sound a bit.
What's the process that you're just going to go through from you?
I mean, take the guitar apart, obviously.
Right.
We'll take it apart. Then heat gun, that's really the best thing. It's just like a coat of armor.
Yeah.
Almost, you know, stripper it just won't even harm it.
Right. So do that. Once it's stripped, then you'll refinish it with nitro.
Right. And it will be half the thickness of this. After you doing sealer, primer,
Yeah.
color, clear, it'll still be thinner than this.
And then with the neck, if I want to go to like kind of more of a, you know, like this is supposed to be a matte But
Yeah.
I get so caught up on this fretboard, especially like if my hands start to sweat.
Yeah.
You were talking to me on the phone about like taking off this finish and then maybe just doing like an oil or something like that, so that it just kind of has more
Yeah.
of a. I mean, this looks like
it's pretty
plain
thick.
maple here. So
Yeah, no, it's the same urethane finish.
okay, all right. Well, I'm gonna let you do your thing.
So this thickness right here, this is way thicker than a sealer, primer, color coat, and 6 coats of clear. It's still thicker.
My Eric Clapton Fender Stratocaster is back in my hands after it has been masterfully refinished by the great Tony Schroom. Now, right off the bat, things that I noticed that are different. Again, I haven't done the test yet. This is just anecdotal based on just playing it a little bit here acoustically, plugging it through a couple of amps. Certainly more resonant. Certainly is easier to play, easier to get around on the fretboard. I don't feel like I'm getting hung up with the original finish. It has a beautiful satin back nitro finish. Everything about it is absolutely beautiful. The only piece of it that is not nitro is just this part of the headstock, because he didn't want to have to put on a new Fender decal or replace the Eric Clapton signature. I'm curious to see how it sounds. So I'm going to invite back in my good friends, Milo and Kendrick, to repeat the same exact songs that we had done before. We're going to play them with exactly the same settings on the same amps. I've got the guitar set up exactly the same way. I removed the pickguard before I gave it to Tony, so there's been no change in the pickup heights. We measured all of the string heights, so it's set up exactly the same way. Pedals are in the exact same place where they were used. Everything about the setup is absolutely identical. I'm going to invite them back in. We're going to play through these 3 songs. We're going to listen back to them, and we're going to see if we hear any detectable difference and analyze the sounds for you.
The last one, or the second one, seemed a little bit more muddy to me on the low end. I think the first one was the after, because it seemed a little bit less muddy. It seemed like the top end was a little bit more pronounced. And overall, I think that my playing was a little bit better because of the neck, and wasn't slowing me down as much. So, but I think they both sound really good. It's just a slight variation.
It's interesting that Milo said that he felt the second one was muddier. I actually felt like the second one was cleaner. And I felt like the top end was it, like when Milo had initially given us his thoughts, he said the top end was more complex. I heard the second one as top end more complex. and I heard it as a little bit. I heard it as just like a little bit cleaner sounding, like the maybe more jangly, more presency, and I don't know, maybe more articulation. I felt like I was the opposite. I felt like the first one actually kind of sounded like maybe it had a little more gain, maybe. And again, nothing's changed about where the pickups are set, the amp settings. None of that's changed. There's definitely a difference between the two. So whatever one it is, I think I actually prefer the second one to the first one.
I think I agree with Milo. The first one was a little brighter, a little lighter, and the second one definitely had like a more like emphasized low end. It kind of sounded like you just turned the bass up just ever so slightly, but there was a tangible difference. I think I like the first one. Yeah. Definitely the second one had more low end oomph and a little darkness on it. I think they both sound great in that context, in kind of like a rock and improvisational thing. That sounded nice. The second one was like a much more pronounced low end in my eyes or my ears. But yeah, and the first one was like a little cleaner, a little brighter.
I heard similar to what Kendrick heard. It's like the first one was very chimey on the top end, but there was something really cool about the second take that I liked. It was a little bit hairier, and it had a different edge to the distortion. It's hard to explain, but hopefully that came across in the video. I think that, yeah, the top end kind of popped a little bit more in the first take, and then in the second one, it was definitely more low end. But I think if I had to choose a favorite, I like the second one because of that, like that little bit more hair on the strings kind of sound.
So I heard the first one sounded like it had less distortion. It sounded less gainy. It had more clarity. It had a nice complexity, a nice chiminess to it. The second one to me, I think sounded like the high-end content I actually didn't like. I felt like it had, I don't know, it was a very constipated kind of sound to it. I didn't like it at all. I definitely preferred the first one, whatever that was. First one, I think, was better sounding. I felt like it had way more clarity on the note. I felt like it had way more openness. The second one sounded, again, constipated, kind of just like a solid block of, I don't know, just like too blobby. It was, I don't know, like displeasing to me. The gain structure, I didn't like. I didn't like the harmonic content of the distortion at all, comparatively to the first one. So the first one for me was definitely a keeper. And again, it's kind of crazy that there is a difference that we can palpably hear. I mean, because we've all so far had some variation in what we heard between these three examples.
I thought the second one definitely had, again, that low end bass thing where it just creeps up a little. But I do like the clarity of the first one, just a little, again, just so much lighter and brighter. Felt like someone took a blanket off your speaker cone on that first one compared to the second. I do kind of like the grit the second one has, but ultimately it has to go to the first one, I think.
Listening to them back to back, I have to say that the second one had a woolly kind of like woofy tone to me. The first one, the overtones were more pleasing. The distortion sounded a little bit sweeter and a little bit more kind of just like ballsy rock and roll. Like the first one right off the bat was just like, it just had a little bit more of a vibe to it, like a little bit more character even. So I think first one definitely takes the cake for that.
So Kendrick, which one was the first, which was the second?
Take a wild guess.
I'm guessing the first one was the Nitro.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. So, Kendrick, you guessed Nitro on all of them.
Yeah.
And then you and I were two for three.
2 for 3?
Yeah.
Okay.
When we first started this experiment, several months ago, in fact, I was a bit skeptical. As much as I love the way that Nitro ages and just the idea of a nitrocellulose finished guitar, I didn't expect that there would be that much of a palpable difference. Yet on every single clip, there was a distinguishable difference between those two types of finishes. Now, that's not to say that it's just the variable of the Nitro or just the variable of the polyurethane. One thing about this guitar is the polyurethane finish was so thick, the difference in weight alone, finished with Nitro versus finished with poly, was 4.5 ounces difference. So it lost a considerable amount of weight just by way of the stripping and refinishing in the nitrocellulose lacquer. But in this particular comparison, there is a night and day difference. It sounds completely different to me, but I'm curious what you think. If you heard a significant difference, please do tell us in the comments. Tell us if you think that this is crazy, that maybe we've used some improper variables in the replication of these sound examples before and after. Again, I feel like we kept it about as tight as we could in terms of being able to not introduce external variables. I think the guitar sounds better. I'm more inspired to play it. And certainly from an acoustic aspect, it sounds nicer. It's more resonant. The neck feels way nicer in this new kind of satiny Nitro finish that was put on it by Tony Schroom. I want to thank Milo and Kendrick. If you're interested in checking out their music, I'm going to list their socials in the description so that you can check them out. Also, I want to give a big shout out to Tony Schroom for doing a beautiful job in refinishing this guitar. It took a couple of months to get this thing done just because of the volatility of the Nitro finish and being able to handle it properly. But he did an absolutely beautiful job refinishing the whole guitar, neck, and body, and really redid this thing from scratch and spent many days stripping off all the old paint. So thank you to him. I'll also put all of his information in the description as well if you're curious about having a guitar refinished. He's an absolute master, so I highly recommend him. And thank you so much for watching and for hanging out and watching us geek out with these two types of finishes. I hope that it was remarkable for you and eye-opening. And until next time, I'm Mason Marangella, aka the Rig Doctor from Vertex Effects, and we'll see you later.